times students would like a little bit of a refresher on how to combine dependent and independent clauses. And if you're one of those people, then just stay right here with me. Remember back to when you last held a newborn baby. Think about it. They can't even lift their heads if they're young enough. They're dependent on us to feed them, dress them, change their diapers, pretty much everything. They are dependent. They certainly could not be on their own. They are not ready to be independent. So hold this understanding of dependent like a baby and independent like a parent as we talk about clauses. So about this point, a lot of times I'll get somebody who's like, what's a clause? So let's just go over that in case you need that refreshed. A lot of times students will say, well, is it a phrase? Well, kind of. A phrase is just a group of words, but a clause is a special kind. It has to have a subject and a verb. So in the gray box, the first one is just a phrase. It's a group of words. It says the new mom and dad. But for it to be a clause, you have to have a subject and a verb. The new mom and dad were tired. Now we're good. So dependent clauses. A dependent clause cannot stand alone as a sentence. Remember the baby. They're dependent on us to feed them and clothe them. So a dependent clause, it needs the other part of the sentence to make sense as a sentence. It cannot stand alone as a sentence. So these four are dependent clauses. They don't make sense by themselves. Let me show you. Number one, because the baby was hungry, well, what happened? Number two, as she drank her milk, what? Number three, when she wakes up every 3 hours, what happens? Number four, if she could sleep through the night, what? So we need something else for these to make sense. So these are dependent clauses. They cannot stand alone as a sentence. And now look, we have the parents. They're independent, they're good, right? So these clauses can stand alone as a sentence. Number one, she drank fast. Number two, she got sleepy. Number three, I feed her. And notice these are kind of short, so it's not really about how long the clause is. Does it have a subject and a verb, and does it make sense on its own? Number four, I could finally get enough sleep. So let's review what our little story thing is. An independent clause is like the parents. They're on their own, they're good, they're fine. The dependent clause is like the baby. It can't be on its own. And just thought I would mention this picture isn't really my idea. I got this from my friend and colleague, Kara Culp, and she and I have used it to teach this to students, and to students who really are generally helped by this. And so that's why I made this to share this with you. So let's start. As she drank her milk, what kind of clause is that? Yeah, it's dependent, like the baby. She got sleepy. What kind of clause is that? Yeah, independent. It It can stand alone by itself if it needs to. And there we have a comma. What's up with that? This is one of the things that this story idea will help you remember. That comma is like that extra help. So if we start with the baby needs extra help, so we use the comma. If you like formulas, here's a formula. Dependent clause, that's the baby, plus the comma, that's the extra help. Since it's the baby, it needs help, plus independent clause, that's the parents. But let's say we switch the clauses. You remember this one? It's the independent clause. So if we start with the independent clause, how does that work? Then we have the dependent clause after it. Do we need the comma? We do not. Because they're the parents, they're independent, they're fine. We do not need that extra help. So if you start with the independent clause, no comma. Independent clause plus dependent clause, no comma. So let's review. If you have the baby plus, remember you need a little extra help with the baby, the comma. And then the independent clause. If we start with the parents, the independent clause, we just add the dependent clause. Hopefully this will help you remember how this works.